can you believe it has been 55 years since the release of Status Quo's single, Down the Dustpipe? It was released on the Pi label in March of 1970 and reached a peak position on the UK charts of number 12 and had a 17-week stay, some of which was climbing up and some of which was going down again. But this is, a monumental moment because in the previous years, they had experimented with rock and roll kind of on the outskirts of it. And they'd said, why can't the sound check be the gig? They got involved with pop and psychedelia in the late 60s with things like Pictures of Matchstick Men, Ice in the Sun, etc. But by 1970, I think people were leaving them alone a little bit, and suddenly they were experimenting with some of this stuff, and the image changed. They weren't, as they always say, they weren't wearing Carnaby Street gear anymore. They were doing, ripped jeans and T-shirt and stuff, and they were just going at it. And they recorded the song by Australian singer-songwriter Carl Groszman, Down the Dustpipe, and the rest is history. It's such a pivotal moment in that change in their sound and cemented it. Now, on the recording of this song and in the music video, you can see that Roy Lyons is still a member of the band at this point, playing sort of boogie-woogie piano. And then you also have Bob Young, who had joined as a roadie a little while before, and now playing harmonica on this track. He also appeared occasionally on TV shows with the band, playing the same instrument. The song was performed on television, including Granada's Doing Your Thing in 1970. It's a great performance if you can see it. It's got a lot of early boogie stuff on there. I think if you look at this song as a whole, I think you can say they recorded that and the rest is history because it cemented the idea. Now, they did release Mark Kelly's Greasy Spoon around the same time. This song wasn't on it, along with the other non-album single, In My Chair. But that album, there was a lot of experimentation with blues and rock and various different things, more along the lines of what they do. But Down the Dustpipe was the first kind of inkling of it. I think it must have been such a shock if you'd been a fan of like this, Pictures of Matchstick Men and stuff, and then suddenly, that sort of thing. It must have been a shock. But I do know of fans, who followed them from there to there. Obviously, a couple of years later, that sound would be cemented on the Pile Driver album, and again, the rest is history. Now, in addition to me talking about this track, I wanted to get some opinions from fans of the band. And here are just some of the comments that I have received. Greg says, despite Tony Blackburn proclaiming it should go down the dustbin, I quite like it. Unashamedly basic, but full of feel. Their first boogie shuffle record, other than Ice in the Sun, that technically is a shuffle, but not a boogie, set the scene for what was to come. That unprepared key change comes out of nowhere, and still gives me a little kick whenever I hear it. Rob says, brilliant track, perfect example of what was to come. Phil says, I was 14 when I first heard this. I was still at school at the time and probably heard it on Luxembourg or Caroline. I remember really liking it a lot, but it wasn't until 72 when I heard Paper Plane I got really hooked on the Quo. Pat says, heard this in 1970 and was instantly a Quo fan. Thank you so much to those who have contributed to this episode. Now it's up to you, dear viewer, dear listener. Do let me know your thoughts on Down the Dustpipe. Is it one of your favourites or just sort of one piece of a very long road? Do let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you again for another episode of the Quo-Cast.